Ana Paula Lisboa, eu sou carioca, tô nessa mesa porque o Júlio estava pensando nela já há alguns meses e ficava me mandando sempre mensagem. E acho que depois de conhecer as outras mulheres também nessa mesa e da curiosidade que ele tem e tinha sobre os motivos, e acho que muita gente também tem, né, de eu ter saído do Rio e ter ido morar em Luanda, na capital angolana, há 2 anos. E sou escritora. E é isso, vamos trocar uma ideia hoje aqui.
Okay, thank you. And Rama?
Hola, so my name is Ramachao. I came from Senegal and Mauritania. I was born in Mauritania and I grew up between Mauritania, Senegal and Europe. And I'm a filmmaker.
And you're a filmmaker. So we have on the panel 4 women, a university professor, researcher, French of Ivorian descent, German, Jamaican, Brazilian living now in Angola, born in Mauritania with family in Senegal, grew up in France. So it's very interesting to see like the richness and also the difference in, you know, the ways of your lives. And what I wanted to know, and starting with you, Mabula, was to know at one moment in your life did you decide, or what made you, you know, do the work that you do, and at what point did you realize, you know, that your identity as a woman of African descent was going to be the focus of your work?
Okay. Before I begin, I want to say that I'm so happy to be here in Rio. I'm so happy to have been invited to FLOOP, and I'm still sorry I missed the edition of last year. It's important for me to be in Brazil because I've studied Brazil so much without being able to come to Brazil until FLOOP invited me. So it makes sense in what I do. So to answer Mam Fatou's question, like this, I don't know, the events that made me want to study the things that I study have to do with my personal history. So I was born in Paris, France, and my parents come from the Ivory Coast, and my parents were part of a migration wave that arrived in France after the independence of the sub-Saharan countries, right? So I was born in France, I grew up in France, I was educated in France, and then I spent a lot of time in the United States. So I think that my interest for what is called the African diaspora, that is to say, the experiences, the cultures, the history of people of African descent scattered throughout the world, and particularly in the Atlantic world, in the context of the transatlantic slave trade, have been of interest to me because I am a black woman. Even though I didn't identify as a black person, I mean, I started identifying with as a black person at a particular time in my life. When I was growing up, I was raised as an Ivorian, as an African, as a Jula woman, as a Muslim woman, and we were, my brothers and sisters, we were the children of immigrants who were supposed to go back home at some point, only that return never took place. Meanwhile, there was another life going on outside of my home, and that was France, which appeared as a very exotic place to me because the food was different, the clothes were different, the lifestyle was different than mine, but I still was growing up there. So little by little, there was a gap widening between the expectations of my parents, the culture of my parents, and the life I was living outside. And outside, I was not recognized as a French person. I was seen as black, I was seen as African. For those who knew things, maybe as a Jula woman, but that, you know, and never as a Muslim. So it really took me it took me to cross the Atlantic and to spend some time in the Americas, particularly the United States and Jamaica, to have a reflection about my individual experience. Because I was studying African Americans, because I was studying Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Jamaicans, I started going back to my own experience and trying to understand and explore what it meant to be black and French and Ivorian. So this is really how I decided to insert myself in this larger diaspora. Because wherever I may find myself in the world, I was approached as a black woman. And I think this is how I moved from an African identity, an Ivorian identity, to a more global, transnational identity. If I walk the streets in Brazil, in Rio, until I speak, nobody knows if I'm a foreigner or if I'm a native-born Brazilian. If I walk the streets in New York, if I walk the streets even in Dakar or in the Ivory Coast, I appear as a black person. So this is really about my personal experience that helped me, that encouraged me to delve into these issues of blackness and global blackness. It really was about understanding my life and my trajectory and my family, and the experience of my family is similar to so many other families scattered around the Atlantic at different times in history for different reasons. But the fact is, we are all here now.
And this is something that I really want us to discuss today, you know, the differences that we can have between blackness and Africanness. And Natasha, for you, like, what made you, you know, decide to center your experience as a woman of African descent? And you will tell us what African descent means for you. Do you see a difference between being of African descent, blackness, or is something that for you, you know, is just one, right?
Well, I say I'm Pan-African, and for me the only difference is that I wasn't born in Africa, but Africa was born in me. So that's my understanding of Africanness, and I think that there are several different forms of blackness, if you want to put it that way. There's nothing that's homogeneous or a single issue. There are many different forms and ideas of blackness, and Pan-Africanism is one that I chose for me, my ideology, which I understand myself as a Pan-African woman in the world. And I think to go back to your first question, I have similar experiences like you. Growing up in my childhood, I spent in London in the Jamaican communities, so around me everybody was black and Jamaican and speaking patois, so that wasn't a topic because that was practically our norm. And then at the age of 8, 9, we moved to Germany, to skip a long story, but then we I ended up going to school in Germany, in a small village in the north of Germany, and we were the only black family in this village. So all of a sudden, that was a moment where I became black, from somebody from outside actually telling me, oh, you look different, you're kind of like, you know, my whole family was like kind of like, you know, we were like, how do you say, in town. And that's a moment when I started seeing or perceiving my blackness not from the inside out, but from the outside in, if you want to put it that way. And it became an issue, and it became, I think through my teenage years, I tried to push it away, you know, I don't want to be dealing with racism, especially as the only black girl in school. That's the, you know, choose your battles, that's a fight you will not win, being singled out. And I think it took until I started studying, where I actually for the first time found a book. It's called Farbe in German. In English, it's the translation is Showing Our Colors, and it's written by black German women. And for the first time, I actually realized, oh, wait a minute, there are black Germans, and maybe I can be a black German too. And that is an identity that I started to embrace for myself. And after finding this book and reading this book, which was practically the first critique, black feminist critique of German colonialism from black German women who grew up in Germany and had similar experiences like me, I knew that I was not the only one. And that's when it became, I don't know, the meaning of life is life itself. So I just dive more into it, and once you're in, you can't get out. So there I am.
Thank you so much. Ana Paula?
Eu não sei, eu não tenho muita ideia de como, de quando a minha experiência como mulher negra brasileira chegou à minha escrita. A minha memória mais antiga, talvez a que tenha me marcado primeiro, foi de uma... Eu tinha escrito... A minha família tem uma experiência, qual a palavra? Não vou encontrar a palavra agora, enfim. Mas o doce, né, sempre fez parte da minha família. Uma família de Umbanda. Então, a experiência das festas de Cosme e Damião, todos os anos, enfim. E também tinha uma experiência que era do doce... E aí, a minha avó, né, sempre distribuiu o doce de Cosme e Damião, que é uma tradição brasileira, mas muito carioca, que é de você colocar... Meio Halloween, sabe? De distribuir doce, só que é uma outra data, é o 27 de setembro. E minha avó sempre distribuiu doce, minha avó e minha mãe têm altar para Cosme e Damião em casa, então... As crianças, né, nós crianças sempre convivemos com o doce e sem poder comer o doce, sempre num lugar de respeito, sabendo que aquele doce não era nosso. Ou então, em festas de aniversário, sempre que quando cortava o bolo, né, na hora do parabéns, os 3 primeiros pedaços, todo mundo sabia que não eram nossos. Os 3 primeiros pedaços iam para o altar. E isso sempre foi muito tranquilo, não era... uma coisa da criança ficar chateada. A gente sempre entendeu que aquele doce não era nosso. E aí eu escrevi um dia um texto sobre isso e fiz uma intervenção, porque o doce também tinha a coisa das festas de aniversário, de você enrolar o seu próprio doce, o seu próprio brigadeiro para o seu aniversário ou para o aniversário de alguma outra criança da família. Então, e o brigadeiro, que é um doce preto. Então, o texto faz uma brincadeira, né? Essa coisa de você enrolar o doce, depois a mão ficar suja do brigadeiro e você poder lamber a própria mão. E aí eu fiz um dia, eu escrevi esse texto e levei ele para uma intervenção que eu gravei no celular, a pessoa ouvia o texto e comia um brigadeiro enquanto ouvia. E aí, enfim, uma pessoa, um homem negro ouviu, né, fez parte da intervenção, adorou o texto, comeu o brigadeiro. E aí, no final, ele falou assim para mim: mas o seu texto está pouco militante. Acho que você tinha que falar mais sobre ser negra e sobre isso tudo, já que você escreve, não sei o quê. E eu tinha uns 20 anos e aquele dia eu não soube o que responder para ele. E eu fui para casa muito agoniada, não achei que ele estava certo, mas também não achei que ele estava errado. Então eu fui para casa pensando naquilo, fiquei muitos dias pensando naquilo. E depois cheguei à conclusão que o meu texto sim estava falando sobre ser negro, estava falando da minha família. Todas as pessoas no texto tinham cor, o brigadeiro tinha cor, o doce tinha cor, Cosme, Damião e Dom tem cor. Então, né, Dom é o que dá a cor, inclusive, a Cosme e Damião. Então, estava tudo ali. E aí, acho que foi ali que eu entendi que o meu desejo sempre foi sobre falar sobre ser negra e sobre a minha família negra de outras formas, ou da forma que eu quisesse falar. Ainda é um desafio, então, estar perto de outras mulheres negras, artistas, enfim, produtoras de alguma forma de conteúdo ou algum conteúdo de pensamento e olhar cada conteúdo e ver o quanto ele é diferente, pensar que eu não faria dessa forma ou eu faria dessa forma e tá tudo bem. E acho que existe a mesma quantidade de bocas, né? Existe o dobro de ouvidos. Então, tem ouvido e tem boca para todo mundo. Então, acho que para mim, pensar... Eu nunca pensei isso de uma forma tão cartesiana, assim, tão específica. Eu acho que foi acontecendo ao mesmo tempo, de alguma forma. E continua acontecendo, na verdade, porque acho que a gente está o tempo inteiro se entendendo no mundo. E, óbvio, né, ter ido morar num país com 95% da população negra mudou mais ainda a minha visão, porque eu passei a não ser uma mulher negra, eu passei a ser uma mulher, mais uma. A Flávia Oliveira fala, né, que para ela o samba, a escola de samba, é o lugar da camuflagem humana, porque é um mar de pretos e ela é só mais uma. Então, eu acho que em Angola eu me sinto assim, só mais uma. E isso, quando você passou 30 anos sendo a uma, né, dá um alívio nesses 2 anos. Acho que é isso.
Obrigada. Rama?
So I will try to do my best in English. So I was born and raised in Nouakchott. My father is mixed Mauritanian, so Tuareg, Arabic, and Senegalese. And my mom, she also came from 2 different populations in Senegal. She's from Jolof Jolof, and she's also Alpular, Fulani. So in a way, I am mixed culture, mixed population, and I'm black, obviously. But when I moved at the age of 5 years to Senegal, the kids were calling me the Arabic, and they were making jokes about me because the Arabic are dirty, the Arabic smells. So I experienced xenophobia really soon. I was 5. And then 2 years after, because when I was 6, my mom had divorced. When I was 2, she divorced with my father, and then my stepfather was a white French engineer. And then we moved to France 2 years after, so I was 7 when I first came in Europe, because I have, well, it's a long story, but I'm going to make it shorter. I have moved 24 times in 4 different countries at the age of 19. So between France, England, Mauritania, Senegal, mostly. But I've moved also in different social classes. In the rural area in Senegal, but also in Europe, in a rich area in Senegal, because my stepfather was an engineer, so it was like they call expat, whatever. So, and also in a very poor area in Europe, because when we left Senegal for politics reason, his family banned him. So, yeah, we start to be like kind of homeless. And so when you dive into that different social classes, different culture, different country, you don't have the same perspective than someone who was raised and born in the same place. And second, when we moved the first time in Europe, my mom told us, you Senegalese and Mauritanian, me and my brother, so keep the best of your culture and take the best of this culture. So for me, I never had a problem of identity. And the back and forth between Europe and Senegal always keep me to have this link with my background, with my family there. So I never felt that I have left something or that I had to become something else. I just knew that I was a human being. And also because it was really important for my mom to teach us freedom. And the freedom of being a human being, first of all. I don't define myself as a black woman, as a woman, as a Senegalese or whatever. I define myself as Ramatiao. And for me, this is the most important thing, because your your being inside you is something which is infinite, like the universe. You need to expand it, to feed it by culture, by knowledge, by love, by everything, by arts. And this human being inside you, the society doesn't want that this human being have his... I'm going to say it in French. En fait, c'est l'idée de puissance de l'être qui est en fait annulée. Ce dont Marx parle. C'est-à-dire qu'on nous empêche...
So the idea that, you know, the human being, the human mind, the human desire is infinite, and that we are forbidden as black people especially to have even the desire to want to become infinite, because we are enclosed into ideas that people have of us.
Yes. So to finish, I don't define myself with that. Of course, I don't deny it because the society will define me like that. And the first time that I realized that I was black, it was when I was in Europe, because when you are raised and born in a place where there is only black people, you don't see your color. It's when you go to another country, when you see the other, that the other define you as a black person, and you realize that you have suddenly a color. And the same thing as being a woman. The first time that I really realized that I was a woman, it was when I met my first film, Boule Fallée. So my film was screened in a film festival of women in Créteil. And lots of women were very angry because my film is about wrestling. And I filmed only male, yeah. Senegalese wrestler. So they were like, why she didn't film women? And I say, oh, it's that to be a woman for the society. So because I'm a woman, I need to film only women. Yeah. So I can't be free to film what I really want.
Mm-hmm. So this is, I mean, like just jumping from what you say, it's very interesting because we all belong from the diaspora, and I mean, we are in different fields, and we can definitely see how like travels, class, nationality, ethnicity, or your own desire to refuse to define yourself can just make, you know, us way more complicated than what people see us and say, oh, that's a black woman, right? And from the desire to want to define yourself within a nationality, I'm French, I'm German, oh, actually, I'm English, or I'm Brazilian, or I'm Rama, right? So this desire to either one. And so what I wanted to know is for you, because I want to come back to the theme of this talk, which is how many diaspora does it take to make Africa, or and make an Africa? What does Africa means for you in your personal life, in your work? Is it something that you want to center in your life, or what does Africa mean for you?
I think this is a very deep philosophical question. I think we could wonder about you know, the general meaning of Africa, this word that has been in use for centuries now, which is a recent creation, actually, because we're talking about a place, a continent that has, let's say, geopolitical implications today, but the people who originate from this continent that is called Africa have only recently defined themselves as African. That's a novelty in history. Before that, people identified or were affiliated with their ethnic groups. People were Wolof, people were Bambara, people were Yorubas, people were all those ethnic affiliations that exist to this day. So I think that sometimes Africa as a term can be problematic because it is an easy word, you know, to talk about this place that nobody knows, that nobody can define really, that has come in existence in its encounter with the Western world. So I think, to me, that this is what I meant by this is a very deep philosophical question. I don't even know what Africa is. From, I don't know, you know, from Cape to Cairo is the phrase. Yeah. You know, East and West Africa, Central Africa, like so many different cultures. But at a precise moment in history, we all became those Africans. I don't know what it means. Yeah. More personally, I would say that Like Africa is my mother. Africa is literally my mother. My mom was born in Africa, in the Ivory Coast, in Segela, this particular northern town of Africa. And so this was my first image and my first representation of the African continent. So what's the importance of my mother? It is very important, but I don't want to be like idealistic about neither Africa nor my mother, because I'm a grown woman now, and maybe the time has come to ask questions. Africa is a place that I didn't even leave. My parents left. I'm still related to this continent by my the ties with my family, because I have relatives that are still living there, but sometimes I don't know what to do about it. Sometimes I feel like it defines me, but it's not only me. And I think that throughout the years, what has brought me comfort is more the diaspora than Africa itself. I'm interested in, Africans going to the Americas, for instance, or Africans going to Europe. But even though I can feel and sense and understand the authority and the origin that Africa constitutes, this is the beginning, this might be the end, I don't know. But it's not the only thing. There have been circulations. So I would simply say that Africa matters a lot because I think Africa is visible in the bodies that we have. So whether we like it or not, we are associated, and the more inferior Africa is perceived, the more inferior you will be perceived as a person of African descent. So there's no use in trying to distance yourself from this place. There's no use. Whether you like it or not, you'll be associated with it. So I don't know, Africa is it's an ambiguity to me. I'm ambivalent, but it is part of me. It is part of me to this day.
Natasha, what is Africa for you?
I think I would distance myself from seeing Africa in a geopolitical sense as a continent full of nations and ethnicities and people. And for me, it's more on a spiritual, universal level that Africa has importance to me, because I do not have direct family ties to the continent, but I do know that my ancestors are from there and they communicate with me every day, all day. And I've been to different African countries, and on my bucket list, I want all 52, and that will happen one day before I leave the planet. So for me, Africa is more, and I think I grew into seeing Africa more in this spiritual way, especially the way that Africa has been portrayed by white Europeans as something that is not good, not positive, as something that is poor, that we've been cut from our spiritual, our energies, our ties, our magics, our beliefs, all of our systems through Europeans so that they could do what they did when they did it. So I really want to leave that image of Africa being a continent with nations that were created by white Europeans for their profit, and really try to reconnect with what Africa actually is. For me, the center of the universe, the only continent that has never drifted, so it has a large importance for this earth that we are actually standing on. And as human beings, we can destroy everything on this planet, but I think really the last woman standing will be Africa. So that's what I believe in. This is something where I really feel that there's so much more there than has ever been written about. When we talk about Africa, it's like the history of Africa started with the enslavement of people, but it did not. There was so much there before that we still have to dive into and delve into and really figure out what it means to us. Are we open enough even to perceive all of these energies and all of these powers and all of this light and love and everything that's coming from there, or are we not? And I think that these are the struggles that we have no matter where we are in the diaspora, that I think that it's really important to reconnect on this level to where spirit actually came from.
Absolutely. This is very important. And Ana Paula, you moved back. What does Africa mean for you? What made you move?
Eu falo sempre que as pessoas elas estão muito interessadas em África, mas elas estão pouco interessadas nos africanos. Porque quando você se abre para uma outra pessoa, você se abre para o confronto, para a discordância, para desconstruir o que você achava que aquela pessoa era e, na verdade, ela não é. Então, eu acho que tem um lugar muito de uma discussão territorial e pouca discussão das pessoas mesmo, do que elas estão fazendo, para onde elas estão viajando, onde elas estão estudando, o que elas estão comendo, o que elas estão vestindo. Então, eu acho que é importante pensar as pessoas, mais do que 54, né, essa disposição geográfica de um continente. E sempre me incomodou muito isso. Eu nunca fui a militante que trouxesse isso, assim, desse lugar de retorno, ou de um desejo mesmo de estar, sabe? Aconteceu, os caminhos se abriram e eu falei, tá bom. E então, eu falo sempre que é um privilégio poder estar junto com africanos, né? Ouvi-los, almoçar, tomar café e jantar com eles, tá? Ser a minha rede de afeto, minha rede de trabalho, minha rede de amor hoje. E há pouco tempo, mas eu nunca ia, assim, hoje, que dia é hoje? 17, né, gente? 17 de outubro de 2019. Pode ser que amanhã eu pense diferente. Mas hoje, pelo menos, eu digo que eu não tenho nenhum desejo. Para mim, eu nunca vou me colocar, nunca vou dizer que eu sou uma mulher africana, mesmo uma mulher africana nascida em diáspora. Porque eu acho que as mulheres africanas têm, pelo menos né, falando ali, meu recorte, uma mulher africana angolana, ela tem, ainda que a gente tenha um monte de coisas parecidas, ela tem pesos sociais e culturais e, enfim, tantas coisas que o meu corpo não tem, ainda que o meu corpo também seja um corpo de uma mulher negra. Então, eu acho que me equiparar a ela é um desrespeito. Eu não é algo que eu queira fazer. Hoje, 17 de outubro de 2019. Ao mesmo tempo, se for para pensar com quem eu me identificaria, né, eu fui adotada, eu digo isso, por uma família que é a família da minha amiga, que eu conheci no Brasil, a Luana, pai angolano, mãe brasileira, foi quem me levou pela primeira vez para Angola. Fui adotada pela família dela angolana, e eles são bacongos, que é uma região, né, do norte de Angola, pega um pouco o Reino do Congo e o Zaire, o Reino do Congo, a República do Congo e o Zaire. Eles são daquela região norte do país. O Uíge, que é essa região bacongo, foi a primeira província que eu visitei fora da capital, com pessoas assim que eu falo, enfim, eu mudei muito nessa viagem. Primeiramente, por exemplo, um exemplo nessa viagem foi que eu fui ao Uíge, que é o norte, o extremo norte, e eu fui bem no extremo norte mesmo, né, no interior da província. E lá, um dia eu acordei, eu estava na rua, né, fui para a rua olhar as pessoas, era uma, sei lá, sexta-feira de manhã, e estava todo mundo indo trabalhar. E estava todo mundo andando na rua com katana, né, que é aquela faca gigante que tem na bandeira, inclusive angolana. E eu olhei e falei, né, com meu olhar totalmente colonizado, crianças com katana. Eu falei, por que essas pessoas estão armadas? Faz nenhum sentido, porque depois eu falei, não é uma arma, é um instrumento de trabalho. E o meu olhar colonizado, carioca, né, que tudo vê uma arma, falei, eu levei um susto. Depois daquele dia eu falei, tá tudo errado, o meu olhar, a minha cabeça tá totalmente errada. E eu mudei muito após essa viagem. E aí, Angola tem essa coisa do... Enfim, foi importante para o país, né, pós-independência, que é o discurso do um só povo e uma só nação. O que faz que, por um lado, foi bom para unir o país, mas que, por outro lado, você apaga toda a diversidade quando você resume todas as pessoas num só povo e uma só nação. E os bakongos, que são dessa região, são a minoria no país, mas, ao mesmo tempo, a família da Luana é bakongo, vive em Luanda, e são, muitas vezes, os mais discriminados no país. Eles são os que têm um tom da pele mais escuro, porque, né, o racismo ainda traz o colorismo para dentro do continente, enfim, para dentro de ser negro, como de uma forma geral. E ainda são os que mantêm mais forte a questão do uso, né, dos tecidos tradicionais, da trança, da comida. E esse ano, há um mês atrás, uma música, né, o maior concurso musical angolano, uma música chamada Eu Sou Bakongo, ganhou como a música preferida, a música mais querida do país. E deu uma confusão, porque umas pessoas começaram a falar que era tribalismo, que estava dividindo as pessoas. E foi muito bonito. E eu me senti muito contemplada. Porque eu falei, ser bakongo em Angola é quase como ser negro no Rio de Janeiro. E esse discurso do eu sou isso, é isso que eu sou, essa é a minha nação, para além de angolano, eu sou bakongo, eu achei isso muito bonito, né? E me contemplou muito. Então, acho que se fosse para se declarar, talvez eu me declararia mais bakongo do que africana.
Thank you. And Rama, what is Africa for you?
I'm really
And Rama is the
agree-
only one here who actually, both of you live in.
I'm quite agree with you in the sense that either I don't define myself as African. I would rather say I am Senegalese and Mauritanian for one reason, because how can I say? First of all, I think in this term of Africa, of course, there is lots of fantasy, because there is lots of ignorance. Ignorance for those who are living inside the continent of their own history due to the history itself, but ignorance also due to the lack of transmission. And for instance, this continent, I don't want to talk about lots of geopolitical things, but I think we need also to emphasize on certain things, like in this continent, 80% of the population were nomads.
Where?
Nomads.
Yes, nomads. So, yeah.
80%, so only 20 were sedentary. So it's another perspective of seeing what is a territory, what is a nation, what is a continent, what is your thing. And of course, it's quite challenging, this question, because what is Africa today? It's in transformation. Because in Senegal, for instance, we have 23 different populations. I don't talk about ethnic or tribal or whatever. I don't understand those words because they don't exist. We are population. And into the continent, you have more than 10,000 different population and culture. So how can I say I'm African? Do I know this 10,000 culture and language? Of course not.
Yeah, but can you see like it?
Yeah.
Just like, okay, I'll let
And
you
I'm
finish.
coming to that, and there is a lack of what is also our history before the slavery came. go back to that question. I'm just going an example. The Arabic came into the continent in the 12th century. The European left with the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. Between the 3rd century and the 12th century, it's black African people who kept the book, the culture of the ancient Greek in Alexandria, who kept the culture, because without those books, there will be no Renaissance. There will be no astronomy or going back to philosophy, going back to mathematics. So it's us who have kept this history this culture later that will coming back to us and enslave us. So what is to be African? It's a very complicated question. So yes, I would rather say I'm Senegalese, and that's why maybe also I came back to live in my country, because I need to be coherent. I need to know what's happening into the field, not what I have dreamed of. Yeah.
So what I think was very interesting with all the things that we heard is, again, this emphasis on, either national identity or the desire for something more diasporic or the desire for something continental. But what I'm hearing from what all four of you said, it's this idea of an origin, but also the movement. That's what you said, Mabula, right? This idea of circulation. And if you take into account that way before the Arabs came, way before the Westerners came, we were a country of people moving around. And I like this idea of seeing this movement within Africa and the way it developed outside of Africa once we all became, scattered all around the world. Because everybody here who is black, if you go to Norway, people will ask you, where are you from? Why would they ask you the question? Because something shows your otherness. And where does that otherness put you? It puts you back to Africa, right? So I like this idea of, a place of origin. We are all here, if we are black, of African origin. So whether it's a place that is real, whether we're thinking of Africa as a continent, whether we're thinking of it as a place that we fantasy, can we at least see it as a place of unity? We all started from there. And then from there, like, what is Africa for us? Is it the continent with the 54 country? Is it Senegal? Is it, the diaspora? Is it a spiritual place? And I think for us, the first thing that we can do is to start owning our own definition of Africa and not accepting a definition that was given by people, a place of poverty, a place of war, a place of negativity. Because like Mabula said, as long as Africa will be attached to those negative traits, any of us will be attached to negativity, right? So my last question to you, whether you think of Africa as the continent or a place of an imaginary place or a spiritual place or a place in your heart or the diaspora, you are doing works to make, to advance the way people see blackness, Africanness. What is it for you to be woman, to be black? And I know Rama is not going to like that question because she's like, I'm not a woman, right? But what it is for you to be black woman of African descent doing the work that you do in academia in France, in the art world, making movies? What is it? What does it look like?
In order? Okay, so I'll begin?
Okay, it's okay.
What does it mean? I think I agree with most of the things that we said regarding Africa, and we all agree on the fact that it is a blurry concept. Mm-hmm. It is a blurry concept. I don't know what it is geographically, only geographically, historically, before the arrival of the Arab peoples or the Westerners, right? Africa has existed. It is the birthplace of the human race. We can all agree on that. Only the human race has been split into various categories throughout the time. And we might reject those labels, But I, like personally, have decided to deal with those labels.
Which labels?
Africanness, blackness,
Ivorianness, Frenchness.
Ivorian, whateverness, right? I can resist those labels. I can try to counter them, negotiate them, but that reality still exists. So I will define myself as an African. I will define myself as a black person. I will define myself as a black woman, precisely to perhaps question this imposition of terms. All the terms, woman, African, black, are terms of inferiorization. And I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the inferiorization. But if this is the label that has been chosen and made to make me feel inferior, I will cling to those. I will cling to those because I will understand that no matter or however false those labels are, they still apply to me, whether I like it or not. And to me, this can also be an act of resistance to say that Africa is beautiful, Africa is old, Africa is knowledgeable, Africa is rich, Africa is the home of spirituality. Africa may be approached problematically because it is an object of desire and it is filled with fantasies. And the diaspora has asked a lot to the African continent, right? This should be the place of return. This should be the place of comfort. This is the place that is going to answer all the questions regarding our origins and all the things, the negative events that have caused us our scattering. But the question that remains is, what does Africa have to say for herself? What does it have to say? Not for the members of the diaspora who need her, but what is Africa really, and what does she have to say? This place, those people. So I think to go back to the question that I think I have forgotten, to be a black woman, an African woman in this world is really, and to accept it, not to be it because you have been made one, but to choose to be one is really, I'll say it again, an act of resistance. This is an act of resistance. This is, it is about saying, this is not ugly, this is beautiful. This is not poor, this is rich and wealthy. This is not inferior, this is at least equal, if not superior. But we don't even want to be hierarchies. We don't want hierarchies. So this would be equal, this is as human. And I think that sometimes, even if people understand those terms as creating divisions, like creating splits, like I'm a human being, I'm not I want to be a human being, I'm not only a woman, I'm not only an African, I'm not only a black person. I think that Africanness, to be a woman or to be a black person is really a reassertion of your humanity. This may sound paradoxical, but sometimes defining yourself along those lines is not a split. It is really an affirmation, an assertion of humanity. So
not to agree with you, because what you're saying for me, it's precisely why I have launched the Sabah. Mm-hmm. It is because being an African person, I said again, it's also about culture. And what happens today, the problem is all the Afro-descendants don't have anymore the culture of the continent. And the problems that creates that people from the continent are defined now, not only by the white person, but also by the people of the diaspora. And this is really problematic, because now not only the white speaks for us, but also the people who are Afro-descendants are speaking for us, because they are saying they're African. And you're not African anymore. Sorry, excuse me. For me, it's really hot from the heart where I'm speaking, because I live that in a daily life. And you are French. And I hope that one day, as you are Maboula Soumaoro, a beautiful and clever woman, and you will be able to say just, I'm French. And once we get
we
there,
don't have to choose.
Sorry, once we get there, we will have win something. Because being African, it's not about the color of the skin, first of all. It's not because we are black that we are African. And second, because it's also about culture. You can be mixed race, I hate this term. But you have a mother, she came from Ardèche, and a father from Guinea. But your mother from Ardèche has raised you and you were born there. So you're French, even though you have this...
But if you walk in the street of Paris, people will ask you, where are you
But
from?
this is in Europe. But this is in Europe.
No, can I add to that? Because I have experiences in Uganda. I was in Uganda. I was invited to a similar situation like this, a Black Feminist Conference in Kampala. And I was specifically invited to represent Black Europe from a Black feminist perspective. But when I arrived, the Ugandan people, African people there, they didn't perceive me as being the third voice alongside a white European, African, and Black European. So I had to constantly fight for the position to constantly say, I am coming and not represent, not speaking for you as African people. I highly want this discourse between the diaspora and the continent. That needs, but I also do not want to be perceived by Africans as the white Eurocentric European. And this, I'm just sharing my experience. So it goes both ways. And I think I totally agree with what you're saying. And like I said, for me, I'm Pan-African. I wouldn't see myself as an African woman. I totally share what you would say, because I think there are so many varieties of blackness. And I think for, to come back to your question that you asked in this round, this is the work that I try to do in Germany. I try, because if people think about Germany, they think about Germany as a white country. This is also an imagined lie, yeah? There have been African-German connections that are older than the country itself, yeah? African people from all over the continent have been coming in and out of Central Europe for centuries, yeah? Before even the country itself, Germany, in the borders that it exists today, was built on the back of Africa through colonialism by Otto von Bismarck, who actually called the European countries to divide Africa in Berlin. Yeah? This is a truth that this country has been denying. This is the work that I try to do, to bring back into memory which weight actually lies or in the whole nation itself, if you want to think in geopolitically or in nation context, that this country would not exist if it was not for Africa. And the way that people are treated, black bodies are treated. And it doesn't matter where you come from, because when you're black in Germany, people are not going to ask you if you're from Senegal, if you're from this place, that place. You are the black body, and your body is worth nothing.
Yeah.
You have to really be able to strive above that and still find the strength to actually tell them back, and you know what? You would be nothing without this body too. You know, so these are the stories that I would like to have. I quit discussing with white people this history. They need to do their homework. But I really would like to have the discussion with African women, with African people, to really exchange this multiplicity of blackness, of beauty, of the variety of our voices. This is where we need, Africa is the future. That's what we need to talk about. We need to go forward with every serious.
We have 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Can we hear Ana Paula on this? Like 2 minutes. Do you wanna say something on this? And we have 2 minutes before we can go to the two questions. And if you want to echo this very interesting conversation.
Eu me tornei mais brasileira indo morar em Angola, porque isso foi jogado na minha cara várias vezes. Não, ainda que, óbvio, né, a gente compartilhe o mesmo colonizador, a mesma língua oficial. Tanto que até hoje, eu estou em Angola, né, no total são 3 anos, mas vivendo mesmo dia a dia são 2 anos e meio. E eu escrevo pouco sobre Angola, sobre Luanda, porque eu tenho preferido nesses 2 anos ouvir, olhar, fazer junto, do que falar. Porque eu acho que qualquer coisa que eu falasse, não sei, ia ser só mais uma pessoa falando. E eu tenho muito medo de errar, né? A gente tem lá a música do... Alguém me avisou para pisar nesse chão devagarinho e eu piso bem devagar lá. E já aconteceu, assim, né? De em lugares em que eu fui trazer o meu lugar de mulher negra, carioca, favelada. Só que lá eu moro no centro da cidade, né? Eu tenho a independência de ser uma mulher que mora sozinha. Eu, né, gero a minha vida, eu dou conta da minha vida, do meu trabalho, das minhas coisas. Eu vou para onde eu quero, a hora que eu quero. E muitas mulheres lá, mesmo mulheres feministas, enfim, panafricanistas, não têm essa liberdade ou esse privilégio. Então, já chegaram e falaram, você chega aqui com seu corpo, seu cabelo natural, botando banca de favelada, que isso não quer dizer nada. E, realmente, isso lá não quer dizer nada. Lá o meu corpo é outro. Não é o mesmo corpo que eu tenho no Rio de Janeiro. Eu tive que entender e aprender isso. E falar baixo e ouvir, né? Estar perto das pessoas mais velhas, especialmente. Então, acho que é isso, é aprender que o nosso corpo realmente é diferente em qualquer lugar. Não adianta você aqui... Não, vai lá, vai ser um outro corpo, vai ser uma outra coisa. Então, acho que é isso, eu tenho aprendido muito.
So 1 minute, I don't know, Mabula, if you want to answer one minute,
okay.
Because I know that we have many questions from the audience.
Yes. Now, so quickly to answer what Rama said, I think this is a fundamental disagreement. I don't think
And
that
we need disagreement.
Yes, of course. But I don't think we need to choose. I don't think the victory, like there will be any victory in me being fully French, because I don't have to choose. You don't have to choose one location. What do you, in concrete terms, what do you do if you were born in one place and your family was born in another, and your maybe children or relatives were born in another place? The motion has already begun. So I don't think I want to cling to one particular place, because one place will never erase the other. We're talking about immigrants, for instance, and African immigrants who have spent 50 years in France, just to give an example, who were born in one place, who still define themselves as African, who are still considered as African. Where are the boundaries, the borders? I think the world is ours. So there's something paradoxical to talk about this physicality that the African continent is, these cultures that are that exist and that are passed down, that are transformed all over the world and throughout history. So I don't think it is about one location. The diaspora, I think I value the diaspora because of its ignorance of boundaries, right? So where does Africa begin and where does it end? This is a real mystery to me. But I don't think that these particular national affiliations and this being recognized as German and as French, and this is what we need to do, of course, locally, but it won't erase my mother. It won't erase, it can never. So we talk about future generations, but at this historical time, we don't have to choose. And what does it mean to have the double nationality? I am French just like I am in terms of geopolitical terms. I am also Ivorian. So what does it mean in concrete terms? Do you see what I mean? What does it mean? Or if I have, I don't know, a niece who's American, isn't she my niece? Isn't she my blood? What does it mean? She's American, I'm French, and we are Ivorian. What does it mean? I think this is a deep question.
Absolutely. I mean, these are deep questions, and I think what's very interesting, I mean, like I've been working on this question for 25 years, and really I feel like I learned something again today, which is, I think that the power of resistance that we have is not in accepting that we are something, but choosing to want to be it or not wanting to be, because we know that in our history, we didn't even have the choice of defining ourselves. And also this idea of being boundarless, because we've been bound, like physically bounded and physically limited to some space. So this idea of just wanting to choose your affiliation or not wanting to choose affiliations because you want to belong to a more fluid space is revolutionary for Black bodies. So I just wanted to know if the audience have questions. We have 20 minutes for questions.
Ana Paula, vou falar inglês, desculpa pela prioridade. Não tem problema. Pode ficar aqui? Acho que esse...
So my name is Luande. I'm Brazilian, but my name is African because my mother just chose my name for the significant. It's like a woman that is going to be queen. And my girlfriend is here. We lived in Portugal for 1 year. And there we known about how the racism was raised where, and how it was. I lived in a building that my neighbor constantly like yelled at me just to go back to Africa. Why? I was like, I'm Brazilian, baby. And then he was like, don't you know Portuguese? And I was like, I know 5 languages, I know how to speak. I know how to understand your shit, your bullshit. And then my perspective about how being a black, dark-colored woman, it's different from being like a light-skinned colored. And actually my question is about how you, that are like outsiders, think about I don't know, the role that Brazilian people has to come between being black in Brazil and people outside thinking that we are like African and we are not. Ana Paula just said that. I wasn't able to visit Africa, but I was able to visit Berlin, like London and all these countries. And I was like treated like an American. And I was like, not today, Satan. And then it's like hard to be Brazilian outside, but like in Portugal it's like awful. I was so sick about this and I'm not coming back there because it's hard. And I was just asking how it's your perspective about being Brazilian in this like thing of diaspora.
So very quickly to answer your question, so Mabula, I met Mabula on TV and she was one of the only black women that I could see growing up on TV, right? And we both researchers working on, diasporic studies and being black in Europe. And last year we had this conversation where we realized that for all my life as a student, as a doctoral student, as a professor, I always thought of the diaspora in Europe, Africa, and North America, right? And then the rest of the world, we completely forget about Brazil. And then you realize that Brazil forget about the rest of the world, or Brazil was taught to forget about the rest of the world. And Mabula has a book that is coming. What's the title?
The Triangle and the Hexagon, or Black is the Journey, Africana is the name.
The triangle and the hexagon. And I feel like personally that for me, my journey as a researcher is not complete because it will be complete when I die, but got to be complete when I come to Brazil because a big chunk of what was missing in diasporic studies is in Brazil. So if we can connect Brazil to the rest of the world, I think that I don't think we're not going to get the solution, but some doors will open. I don't know what's your solution.
And I think it takes us back to the question of borders. And I think that because we were trained as Anglicists, right? Our attention was drawn to, I don't know, the UK or, the Anglophone Caribbean or North America with the United States. And just because of a language, just because we don't speak Portuguese, we left out Brazil, which is ridiculous, even in terms of the way the academic field is conceived. Look at the size of Brazil. The size of Brazil. And just because we don't speak the language, just because the colonizer was not the same as our colonizer, we cannot speak. We cannot speak. So this difference in language, does it translate in the difference in experiences? This doesn't make any sense. I'm sure that we have experiences, history, cultures, food, music, like things that we recognize. Even it's only my 3rd time in Brazil, but there are things that you recognize wherever you go. And because of the border, we cannot communicate. And the border here is the language. Because some speak Portuguese, some speak English, some speak French, some speak other languages. We cannot, communicate. So this is one of the obstacles that we need to, to overcome and to understand, so that we can, perhaps reflect collectively what does it mean to be black outside of your country, whatever your country is. Whatever your nation.
Natasha, you were just in Bahia.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that we need to have a conversation within the diaspora, and Brazil is the biggest black community in the diaspora, and I just don't know why the world doesn't know, because it's actually absolutely ridiculous not to know, but we know why we don't know, because white people control knowledge, right? So if we start having conversations with each other as the diaspora, with people within the diaspora, to make the diaspora come closer together, I think then having conversations with the continent will also be more easier, will be maybe more, yeah, I don't know. But I think it has to be like an internal, it has to happen. It has to, well, it's happening now, so that's a good
That's what we're doing right now,
So,
right?
You know?
Awesome, thank you so much. Question?
Meu nome é Isoila, eu sou de Angola, Ana Paula. Eu gostaria de falar muito rapidamente algumas coisas que a Ana Paula falou durante o seu discurso sobre a sua experiência em Angola. Angola é um país que tem uma grande cultura. Angola ela é feita de várias etnias. E quando você fala de Bakongo, os Bakongos eles são parte de uma etnia. Então, eu vou pegar para falar um pouquinho da frase, por exemplo, um só povo, uma só nação. Essa frase, ela é não só para unificar o povo no sentido de pós-independência, mas para quebrar um pouco de eu sou Bakongo, eu sou Umbundo, eu sou Quimbundo, que são vários povos que existem em Angola. Então, quando a pergunta para você foi o que você... acho que é sobre África, né? O que você pensa, o que é África para você? E você falou que você é mais Bakongo do que africana, você assim se considera. Eu gostaria de te falar que os Bakongos, eles são um dos povos angolanos que mais revestem as suas características. Eu diria que dentro de Angola eles poderiam ser bem mais africanos. Então, eles falam bastante a sua língua, né? Porque os outros povos de Angola eles falam bastante português. Os Bakongos são uns dos poucos que eles mantêm a tradição e a cultura da língua, alimentação, como você falou. E sobre você falar sobre a província do Uíge, que você ficou espantada de ver gente com katanas na mão. Eu diria que isso aqui também acontece, mas isso acontece no Brasil na área rural, porque você visitou uma província pouco desenvolvida. Então, eu sou angolana, eu resido há 5 anos no Brasil. E eu já convivi com gente brasileira que nunca saiu da sua cidade. Que, para mim, isso foi um grande espanto, assim. Eu morei em Santa Catarina, em Florianópolis, que é uma região muito branca, todo mundo aqui deve saber. Então, para mim, chegar em Santa Catarina e a pessoa falar: nossa, você é angolana, você fala português? Você aprendeu a falar português aonde? Angola fala português. Então, é uma coisa que você fica meio impactada, assim. Eu vou usar a palavra um pouco... a ignorância das pessoas, né? Então, você chegar em Angola e ver esse cenário, eu acho que ele chega a ser um pouco mais aceitável do que aqui no Brasil, porque Angola é um país que viveu 35 anos de guerra civil, né? E a gente está reconstruindo o país e está reconstruindo usando uma cultura, um padrão, né, que não é o nosso, que foi introduzido e a gente está se adaptando, vamos falar assim. Então, eu acho que é um pouco normal, vamos dizer assim, um pouco natural. Você chegar num lugar pouco desenvolvido e ver uma pessoa acordar às 5 da manhã e ir para a lavra, a gente chama lavra, né? Capinar, porque ali é onde sai o sustento da pessoa. É como ir para a roça cultivar, né? Então...
Do you want to answer?
Vou só comentar. Eu acho super normal. Na verdade, a normal era eu ali.
Não, é só
o olhar errado era totalmente
Não, é só
o
para
meu.
dizer para você que talvez não seja um olhar errado. Talvez você não tenha tido alguém para questionar, para te esclarecer sobre isso. Como aqui tem muita gente que talvez não conhece Angola e nunca visitou Angola, é um pouco importante a gente transparecer essa parte, porque geralmente eu, como angolana aqui no Rio de Janeiro, eu recebo perguntas como: você pensa em voltar para o teu país? Claro, eu penso, eu sou de lá. É a mesma coisa que você falou, você se sente mais brasileira morando lá. Eu me sinto mais angolana morando aqui, porque eu vivo a minha cultura estando aqui. E não tem como a gente, sendo carioca, sendo angolano, ir para um outro país e dizer: não, agora eu sou angolano, ou agora eu sou brasileiro. Porque a essência está em você, não está no lugar. É basicamente isso.
Thank you. So, do you want to give her a short answer so we can have time for one more question? It's like a short answer. So we can...
Desde a primeira... desculpa, posso comentar? Posso falar? Desde a primeira vez que eu estive em Luanda, eu sempre tive muito cuidado, por exemplo, um cuidado que eu tenho muito grande é com as fotos que eu posto. Porque o turista branco Salvador que vai para a África e fica lá tirando foto das crianças, das zungueiras, sabe? Eu falei, eu não posso ser essa pessoa, é muito vergonha, não posso. Então eu tomo muito cuidado com tudo, né? Como eu falei, eu falo, não é que eu fale pouco, é porque eu acho que eu não tenho que falar, eu tô lá, eu tô vivendo, eu não sou turista em Angola. Lá é minha vida, é minha casa. Então, eu posto o que eu acho bonito, tanto quanto eu estou andando aqui na Presidente Vargas e tiraria uma foto. Mas, por exemplo, a primeira foto que eu postei em Angola foi de um prédio. E era um prédio, né? Era o sol, o céu, o prédio. E várias perguntas do tipo, brasileiro, ignorante. Ai, mas tem prédio aí? Não, as pessoas moram em ocas, em grandes casas de barro na cidade, né? Luanda é uma cidade absolutamente urbana, tão grande, sei lá, são 6 milhões de pessoas, né? O Rio tem 7. Então, é uma grande capital, uma cidade absolutamente urbana. Eu tô lá também porque tem o mar perto, me lembra muita coisa do Rio. Então é isso, acho que é um cuidado, é um olhar que a gente tem, que eu tenho, é óbvio, em 30 anos, antes de eu me mudar, um olhar colonizado, um olhar de ver sempre o estranhamento e não a normalidade que é você usar uma katana para acordar e trabalhar na lavra. E ponto.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question. You. She had her hand. Okay, so can you ask this both questions, and we'll try to give you a common answer. So
okay,
we'll take both questions.
Eu posso começar?
Go. Yes, we'll take both questions.
Primeiro, ok? Tá ouvindo? Primeiro, muito obrigada pela mesa. Eu acho que essa diversidade está bem explícita. Eu quero voltar ao nome da mesa, que é com quantas Áfricas se faz uma diáspora, e pensar que também com quantas diásporas nós temos, né? Vocês reivindicam essa referência do Brasil enquanto um país diaspórico africano e de como o restante das diásporas não conhecem o Brasil. E eu também sou pesquisadora aqui na Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro, e a minha pesquisa justamente vai falar desse diálogo da diáspora brasileira com a diáspora norte-americana. Mas eu queria falar com vocês, como é que vocês veem essa possibilidade do diálogo entre as diásporas, e com quantas diásporas se faz uma África também?
Bom, também quero agradecer, eu acho que essa mesa está maravilhosa, as mulheres negras, inteligentes, competentes. Eu quero ver essa mesa mais nas universidades. A gente pode levar essa galera para as universidades, porque essa inteligência, essa competência, a gente também precisa lá. Eu quero dirigir a minha pergunta, me desculpem, todas maravilhosas, mas eu estou fazendo um trabalho com o movimento afro-alemão e usei teu livro, Natasha. Então, para mim é um prazer estar te vendo aqui e eu acho interessantíssimo você estar aqui presente, desconstruir um pouco essa visão da Alemanha branca, loura, de olho azul. Tem mulher negra falando alemão, isso é muito importante, porque uma das coisas na minha pesquisa que eu fiquei um tanto quanto surpresa é que a gente não tem autores negros alemães nas nossas bibliotecas, a gente não ouve falar dessas pessoas, nós precisamos ler esses autores, os autores negros franceses, negros ingleses, negros alemães, porque isso é muito importante, isso faz parte também. Da mesma forma, eu quero agradecer a professora que lembrou que o Brasil precisa estar nessa história. Quando li Atlântico Negro, é um livro maravilhoso, mas ele vai até o Caribe e volta. Ele não fala do Brasil, e eu acho, no mínimo, interessante como falar da diáspora negra no mundo sem falar do país que mais tem negros fora da África. Isso é importantíssimo, nós queremos estar presentes, nós queremos fazer essa discussão, até porque nós tivemos pessoas pensando isso agora e ainda temos. Então, a gente precisa construir essa ponte e eu também estou fazendo um trabalho mais com o movimento afro-alemão. Então, eu queria que você falasse um pouco também dessa experiência da Audre Lorde lá, construindo essa ponte, como você falou no seu livro, e é um pouco, eu acho que essa coisa do third space, né? Me desculpem aqui o mal inglês. Eu fui em Cuba e lá me achavam cubana. Eu morei em Portugal e eu era conotada como brasileira, como africana, ou seja, o olhar do outro é do outro. O importante é como você se percebe, não é? Então, eu quero agradecer, eu estou feliz aqui, para mim já basta, gente.
Rama, tu veux répondre à la première question? Et Maboula?
When I have lunch, okay, I'm a filmmaker. I live and work in Dakar, but I was a little bit tired of the talks, and I say, oh, okay, Rama, how can you do something concrete? That's why I've launched the event Sabar, Les Sabars Artistiques. Sabar means in Senegalese, in Wolof, it's a cycle of dance where it's only for women. So it was the first time in the history, and that I have found out after, that it was African women who are welcoming Afro-descendant and women of the diaspora and black women. Because also when you go to Thailand, they're not Afro-descendant, but you have also black women in the Caribbean. So they were coming from Caribbean, from North America, from Europe, from Asia, from Angola, from South Africa, from Ethiopia, from North Africa, but we didn't have means to bring someone from Brazil because it was a first edition. And the topics were to give a place, a safe place, comfortable place for each of them to talk about what is to be a woman, what is to be a black, what is to be an African, and what is also to be an artist. And moreover, it was also important to have all social classes, because most of the time I have the privilege to have passports that allows me to come here in Brazil and talk to you. But people in my streets, most of them don't have this passport, so their voice can't be heard. So it was important that for once it was Africa as the continent who was welcoming the Afro-descendant and the diaspora. And I think and I hope that there will be more and more this kind of event, artistic, political, in research, to change also this fact that we always have to go outside to meet ourselves.
Excellent, excellent. Actually, we have time for one more, and unless, Natasha, do you want to comment on?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm really happy to come to Brazil and somebody's read my book. Yay! Like strike. So thank you. I can
Hey,
only
we've
give
been
that
reading your
back.
books, girl. We've been reading your books. We have been reading your work.
Because it's for me, it's an honor to be here as well. I have to speak English, but I hope you understand me. It's an honor to be here, and I think that as an Afro-German community or a Black German community, we're very small in number in comparison to France or the UK, but that at the same time is also our strength. And this
Very
is
dynamic. It's a very active group.
And I experienced this not inside Germany, but when I went up north to Scandinavia. I work in Finland, I work with Afro-Finnish, in Denmark, and so on. And where they actually look to Germany to see how we moved.
In France.
Within Europe as a very small, very diverse Black community as we are. And this is what actually gave me hope, because sometimes being inside Germany, doing the work inside, you really lose energy, you lose hope, you think, oh my God, what are we doing this for sometimes? But every time going back out, it just changes my perspective on what we're actually doing and strengthens me, and being here also strengthens me. And when I go back, like in 2 months, in December, I go back to Germany, I can't wait to put everything back in and to let it grow back out. And maybe to your question of the diaspora, because I think that's important, my understanding of the diaspora, there is only one diaspora, and that is the entire rest of the world outside of Africa. And there is one continent. I don't know if we can count. I think that the one diaspora is very diverse, but that's why I can only emphasize that this diaspora has to learn to grow together, because we are of importance for Africa, economically, philosophically, and I'm not saying that Africa, please don't misunderstand me, has to do what we say, but I think that we can be a counter voice to what is coming out of Europe and what is coming out of this part of the world, or from beyond the continent, which is actually destroying the continent. I see our strength in actually holding that back and actually keeping Africa strong and alive. I don't know, this is maybe optimistic, but yeah, you have to be optimistic to be an activist sometimes, so.
Well, thank you so much for being, oh, actually, do we have time for one more? I am giving it to her. Woo! You take the last question. Yes, one more question. Yes. We're going to try to keep it short before they cut the mic. Okay. One more question. You're going to try to keep it short, okay? So they don't cut the mic.
Boa tarde. Primeiro, gostaria de saudar a mesa, parabenizar a organização do evento também, pelas ricas palestras que estamos tendo aqui. Eu só vou fazer uma consideração rapidinha. Primeiramente, eu gostaria de concordar com a... Qual é o nome dela?
Rama?
Isso, quando ela diz que ela não é africana, ela é senegalesa, e ela não é africana, porque o tempo todo nós estamos tratando a África como um país. O tempo todo ninguém fala assim, Senegal, Moçambique, Cabo Verde, Angola, Guiné. São 84 países. Por que nós estamos sempre tratando como um país, né? São 54 países, mais de 84 idiomas. E nós estamos tratando como se fossem problemas coletivos, né? E quem tem esse olhar de África é o europeu. Quem tem esse olhar de África é o colonizador, que trata como se fosse Angola, Moçambique, tem o mesmo problema, logo vão ter a mesma resolução. É mentira. Nós temos idiomas diferentes, nós temos culturas diferentes. Então, vamos tentar, por exemplo, teve uma pessoa que fez uma pergunta, mas ela falou Alemanha, ela não falou a Europa. E o tempo todo nós ficamos batendo no mesmo erro, tratando a África como se fosse um país. A África não é um país. A África é um continente, tanto quanto a América, a Europa e a Ásia. Então, só para nós que estamos aqui nessa palestra rica não cometemos os mesmos erros que os europeus, que os colonizadores cometem, que é tratar tudo como se fosse indivíduo. E aí eu concordo muito com ela quando ela diz isso, porque eu não sou africana. Eu sou porque eu nasci no continente, mas eu sou angolana primeiramente, antes de qualquer coisa. Meu país tem problemas diferentes do Congo, meu país tem soluções diferentes do Congo. Só essa consideraçãozinha rapidinha mesmo.
Abula?
Okay. Yeah.
That was a really good comment.
Maybe quickly on this last comment.
30 seconds.
Yes, 30. I think this is a very interesting point, but this is also paradoxical. Africa is not a country, of course. Senegal can be defined as a country, but that's a new country. Yeah. That's a recent country. So what do we want? We were talking about earlier about the Berlin Conference. You spoke about the colonizers who made mistakes. The colonizers didn't make any mistakes. They did exactly what they wanted to do. It's not a mistake. That was their decision. Deliberate. That we can, yes, deliberate. So if we follow those borders, right, the Berlin Conference, Senegal today, the Ivory Coast, we are following those borders. There are populations...
It used to be the Ghana Empire.
Yes. There are populations that can be found in Senegal or in the Ivory Coast or in Kenya today that are not, I'm talking about ethnic groups, that are not only found within those nation states, right? I'm Jula from the Ivory Coast. You can find Julas in Senegal. You can find Julas in Mali. So what do we do about that? So again, the question of borders. If we think of acts of resistance such as Pan-Africanism, there were multiple visions of Pan-Africanism, and some were opposed to the nation states of Africa. They wanted to have a United States of Africa. And then there was another vision that wanted to have Senegal, Ivory Coast, Morocco, Mauritania, or whatever. There have been multiple views. It's not only one direction that the diaspora or the continent itself has been able to agree on. So I think that these are complex issues. We can cling to the nationality, but I will say that the nationalities don't make any sense. They don't make any sense to this day. So we can cling to them, and they may be helpful to a certain extent, but I don't think they're efficient, and I don't think they respect whatever the truth about the African continent was supposed to be, because we're talking about truth, reality, history, but that is so complex. I don't know when it began, I don't know where it will end, but those nationalities are recent, recent, like decades, 50 years, 60 years. And we're talking about millennia here. So that's something that we need to reflect on, I think.
Até por isso que eu disse que eu me considero mais bakongo. Obrigada. Por isso eu disse que eu me considero mais bakongo do que africana, né? Porque os bakongos, eles estão no Zaire, eles estão na República Democrática do Congo, eles estão em Angola, eles estão no continente, eles são uma nação antes do português, né, definir o que era esse território. E eu só queria falar uma coisa final também, que é, até, né, quando eu mediei a mesa da Grada Quilomba aqui, né, aqui mesmo, e quando vocês falam, e eu fico muito contemplada quando vocês falam da humanidade, né, de se entender primeiro como pessoa, como um ser humano, até antes de se pensar como mulher, e depois como uma mulher negra ou uma mulher africana. Me contempla muito, mas isso para mim ainda é um desafio. Eu não sei ainda, né, talvez, como tem uma amiga angolana que diz para mim que o Brasil me estragou. E eu concordo. Ela fala, se você tivesse nascido aqui, você seria bem melhor. E eu falo, sim, né, porque o racismo, eu acho que estudar a diáspora é estudar o racismo, e acho que o racismo brasileiro, ele tem uma sofisticação, né? Então, eu acho que me pensar humana dentro dessas várias camadas ainda é um desafio, e eu acho que passa pela diáspora brasileira.
Wow, so I hope that you didn't come here today thinking that you're going to get answers. Because you're leaving with more questions. But this is exactly what we need, questions, because for the longest time, we were not able to ask those questions, right? So think about these, and I was just thinking that what we talked about here today, we need to do something with it, right? So we'll see what we're going to do, with projects or something with all this conversation, and maybe come back and share, more of these answers with we. Thank you so much for coming.